name is Patti Niemi, and I have been a percussionist with the San Francisco Opera Orchestra for almost 30 years now. I began playing percussion when I was 10 years old in elementary school, and at age 12, I had the good fortune to begin studying at the Eastman School of Music with Ruth Kahn for the next 6 years. I went to Julliard and got my bachelor's degree in 1987, and from 1988 through 1992, I was in the new World Symphony in Miami Beach. In 1992, I won the position with San Francisco Opera Orchestra, and I've been playing there since. I've had the great good fortune of having some of the world's best singers about 10 to 20 feet away from my head. It's been a really wonderful career. So I always had another passion all this time, and that was writing. And in 2016, I published a book called Sticking It Out from Julliard to the Orchestra Pit. I just really always loved reading stories and telling my own story. And I think a lot of other people feel the same way. It really connects us to each other. So here's a relevant story. I have met Anita Hill twice in my life. The first was in 1991 on TV with the rest of the country when she spoke before a committee about her harassment by Supreme Court nominee Clarence Thomas. The second time I met her was in 2014 on a street in San Francisco. She had just finished a lecture, which I had attended, and she was going by me in a car, and she saw me just sobbing on the sidewalk after the lecture. And she rolled down the window, and I said to her, "You made me stop doubting myself." And it was her sharing her story, which caused me to rethink what had happened to me at Julliard, a situation in which I had experienced sexual harassment. And those times meeting her and hearing her story made me start thinking this was really about power. It wasn't about sex. It was really eye-opening for me. So when I wrote my story, I detailed a lot of that experience at Julliard, and I talked a lot about performance anxiety. That was another issue that had bothered me greatly over many, many years, and in some ways still does. It's a very difficult subject for many musicians. So after I published my book, I received messages from many, many people talking about their experiences with harassment or their experiences with anxiety. And that was another eye-opening and connecting experience for me. A lot of these people are people that you would look at and think they have it all together. Wow, this person couldn't possibly have performance anxiety. Look how calm they are. And people have said that about me. I look calm when in truth I was terrified. So that wasn't the case at all, but it's only by opening up and telling your story that other people will tell you their stories. So it's a really powerful way of connecting with other people. So the process of writing, it's very similar to the process of learning to become a musician or learning to be good at any skill you set out to be, anything that's a passion of yours. The first thing that's important in learning something is the ability to delay gratification. And as musicians, we're all really good at that. Whether you're spending 6 hours alone in a practice room or 6 hours typing on a computer, it's the same thing. It's thinking about your future self and what do you want for your future self? What hopes and dreams do you have for that person? If you can think about that future self, you will delay the gratification that comes from turning on the TV or eating even something good like reading a book. You have to sit down and grind out that glacial process of improvement. You have to accept that something is going to get just a little bit better every day. And some days it's not going to get better, or some days it's going to get just a little bit worse before you make a breakthrough. So that ability is probably the most important skill. The second one, and again, this pertains to music as well, is the ability to learn from failure. And failure is a funny word. I don't even like to call it that. I'd rather call it a pothole because failure sounds like something bad. I think failure can be a gift. Failure can tell you it's not quite ready yet. Go back, work harder. And if you're able to accept that the failures that come to you are really lessons or they're your teachers, you can learn from them and always keep moving on. I had 6 auditions that I failed at before I got my job in the San Francisco Opera. Every one of those auditions was a lesson for me. Every one of those, and I'm not saying they're not heartbreaking. I'm not saying you don't cry or feel bad about it for a while. Of course I did. But at the end of the day, you say, what did I learn from this? What did it teach me? How can I do better? The process of writing was exactly the same, although it took a little longer. It was about 20 years from the time I seriously started writing a book until I got it published. And that's a very long time frame. That's a long time to sit around and delay that gratification. But I learned during that time. I started the process of querying agents, which is a very formulaic thing similar to auditions. You write a certain type of query letter, you try to get an agent, and the agent is the one who helps you get the book published. From the time I started that until I found an agent was 6 years. And I sent off about 75 query letters. So if you do the math, 74 of those were rejections. And every one of those to me was a lesson. Why did this agent not want me? Was it the wrong agent I queried? Were they not interested in the type of work that I was trying to sell them? What was wrong with my query letter? What could I do better in the query letter? Was I not grabbing their attention? All these things were lessons. So the ability to learn from failures or rejection is another really important part of becoming a writer. Another important thing, same as music, study what came before you. So you're listening to the best recordings, you're listening to the best performers, you're reading the most amazing writers. That's very important. And think about why they're great, not just read them, but why is this so great? Why do I like it so much? But don't forget to read things that aren't quite so great. Don't forget when you're listening to something that doesn't quite do it for you, think about why. Stephen King, the author, wrote a book called On Writing, which is one of the best books on writing that has ever been written, I think. A lot of other people think so too. And one of his great pieces of advice was, go out and get a book that you think is just not going to be good. Pick something that is universally considered bad and read it. It will be more instructive to you than all the books that are great. And he was right. So now at times, if I have a book that I'm not feeling so great about, I'm reading, I read it to the end and try to figure out why. It's incredibly instructive. So you have to learn from that as well as the great ones. Another similarity with music is that it is really important to keep a journal. And that sounds like something that is more specific to writing. It may have its differences too. I just remember that during the process of taking lessons, during the process of auditioning, I wrote down a lot of what was going on at the time. So it was almost like a brain dump. I would get out of the audition and just start writing. You can speak it, you can record it on your phone as well, but remember what happened. And there are a couple good reasons for this. The first is that you don't always know what's most important while it's happening. So I have journals going back now about 35 years, but also some from when I was a kid as well, which we called diaries then. So at the time I was thinking, you know, here I am writing down things that happened during the day, just practicing or whatever I did, not thinking these were terribly important. But when I set out to write a book, these became incredibly important because you don't know what's important until years later sometimes. And the second part of that is those years later, you may have forgotten quite a bit. If something really important happens and you think, well, of course, I'm always going to remember this. 30 years later, you might not. And it won't be remembered in with the same vivid color that you had if you wrote it down. So it's important for both, for music, for writing. Keep a journal, even if it's just a couple lines a night. Your future self will appreciate it. It's very important. So the financial aspect, because we are talking about second careers in all aspects, the financial aspect is an important one. And I think there are certainly writers who have made a living at it, writers who have made a great living at it, but that was not my experience. I say my experience, I would sum up as don't quit your night job. I was very lucky to get my job in the San Francisco Opera and to be playing it for this long. And that has been what's kept me going as a writer. I think for me, writing, also similar to music, you do spend a lot of money pursuing it. I mean, as a kid, you take lessons and you have to buy instruments, and then you're older and you travel to auditions. It's a pretty expensive pursuit, and you put your money there because you're passionate about it. For me, it was the same with writing. I didn't go to school for writing, but I had to educate myself, and I got help from many wonderful mentors along the way. The freelance editors, Sometimes other readers that you have reading groups with, you can talk to them about reading your work and you reading theirs. So you can have these mentors and colleagues, but sometimes that costs money. So again, I was really lucky to have another job that was able to keep me pursuing this second career, this second passion that I really loved. So similar for me and many others, like music and writing, I think we do these passions because we can't not do them. We're just that passionate about it. And I hope that's told you just a little bit about the writing life. Thank you so much.